seat issue and matters arising. Welcome to Politics Tonight. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. Now let's begin with some developments in the polity. National Assembly election petition tribunals are causing upsets across states as electoral victories of some members of the 10th House of Representatives have been upturned. But there are some who are smiling in the aftermath of tribunal verdicts. National Assembly correspondent Jokadisa reports.
Section 285, subsection 6 of the 1999 Constitution as amended states, an election tribunal shall deliver its judgment in writing within 180 days from the date of the filing of the petition. By this provision, election petition tribunals across the states are rounding up their verdicts on the petitions before them. In the last 2 weeks, no less than 20 members of the 10th House have been unseated by the judgments of the various tribunals handling petitions of the National Assembly election held in February. In line with constitutional provisions, those affected have headed to the appeal court to challenge their laws. Many of the sacked lawmakers have, through press statements, appealed to their supporters to remain calm. Others are unequivocal about their next step.
This judgment is perversion of justice and an insult on the principle of constitutional justice. And as a soldier of democracy and defender of the people's interests, I will fight this till the end. And my courage and strength for advocacy have been emboldened.
For Ikenga Ugochinyuri, this solidarity visit by some of his associates is a soothing balm as he heads for appeal. In line with the 180 days timeline, all election petitions are expected to be dealt with by Saturday, 16 September, as the battle for affected seats moves to the Court of Appeal. Joke Edsa, TVC News, Abuja.
Let's take a short break, and when we return, it's over time to speak with our first guest of the day, who is the former Deputy Permanent Representative of Nigeria to the United Nations and one-time directing staff of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, Ambassador Usman Seriki, for discussion on the implications of President Tinubu's economic diplomacy. Please stay with us. Welcome back, and now to our interview with the first guest of the day. I'm joined by the former Deputy Permanent Representative of Nigeria to the United Nations, Ambassador Usman Seriki, tonight to discussing the implications of President Bola Tinubu's economic diplomacy. Ambassador Seriki was also a one-time directing staff of National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. Thank you so much for joining us again, sir.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join you also. Thank you.
All right. So let's start with the concept of economic diplomacy. How significant is it for national development?
Well, it is very significant because the economy drives the national development program of any country. And you cannot develop the economy without the injection of finance, technology, managerial skills, and other partnerships that form the critical ingredients of development. And I think economic development, economic diplomacy is aimed at aggregating all those factors that cascade to create the critical mass required to develop a nation. Finance is one of it, industrialization, equipment, machinery, know-how in management, banking services, and so many things. So diplomacy actually encapsulates the totality of the framework in which actually development comes to a country.
Right. So the president has adopted this as part of efforts to revive the economy. So what's the implication of his economic diplomacy for the country?
Well, I think the president has the foresight to select the themes and also the strategy to engage with other countries and partners to attract investment to Nigeria. And I think it's also part of the renewed hope agenda and the 8-point agenda to focus on critical areas of significance to jumpstart the economy, if you will, in order to create the necessary conditions for industrialization, enhancement of manufacturing, value addition, and also tapping into the global value chain of trade, commerce, investment, finance, and so forth. So the president's personal drive is very, very important because he is now making the pitch on behalf of Nigeria at the highest political level of the country that Nigeria should be trusted, Nigeria should be taken into confidence, and then Nigeria, there is a new mindset, a new thinking in the country now that is elastic and flexible towards attracting foreign investors, creating partnerships, and offering opportunities to genuine players to come into the country to harness and tap into the bountiful resources that we have. So in this regard, the president actually is the #1 salesperson, the salesman of the Nigerian condition. And secondly, constitutionally, he is the top diplomat. So what he is doing actually is discharging the duties of his office as befitting a conscientious office holder to make Nigeria attractive, to sell the country to the rest of the world, and assure partners to come and engage with us on mutually beneficial basis in order to reap the benefits of the relationship that we are creating today. So it's in keeping with the demands of his office. Let me remind Nigerians that being president is not just a privilege, but also a great responsibility that requires discharging the functions of that office in various capacities, like maintenance of security, conduct of diplomacy, creating intercommunal harmony, religious harmony in the country, and also upholding the rule of law. So economic diplomacy is just one aspect of the top jobs that the president is expected to do and to deliver to the country.
Right. So as a diplomat, do you think Nigeria is in the best position to successfully pursue such strategy?
Well, yes, of course. #1, the first consideration is this political system we are running. It's an open, democratic, free country where investments are protected by law and by the traditions of the business tradition and the climate of the country. Secondly, we are a country that is given to observing rule of law, both at the local, national level and at the international stage. So these two critical factors make it possible for any country that is willing to engage with us on mutually beneficial levels to come and consider investing or trading or undertaking any type of business with us without the apprehensions of certain collateral damages occurring in the relationship between us and them. So Nigeria, as Mr. President said, is open for business, and we are going to respect the sensitivities of all other partners if they come here genuinely to trade with us. So Nigeria is really ripe for engagement with all countries in terms of establishing mutual relationship towards advancing the global agenda of sustainable development, our regional priorities in creating employment, reducing poverty, and then harnessing our productive forces, our resources for the improvement of the welfare and the well-being of our people, not only in Nigeria, but regionally. Because if you come from India, for instance, or UAE, or America, or Saudi Arabia, or anywhere to invest in Nigeria, you are actually investing in the ECOWAS economy of about 500 million people. So this is quite considerable. And then the resources here in Nigeria and the rest of West Africa are virtually limitless in terms of infusion into the creation of conditions that will be favorable for investors.
Right. So, Ambassador, when you take into cognizance some of the basic concepts of diplomacy, and particularly economic diplomacy, which are representation, negotiation, communication, and image management, how will you describe the way President Tinubu has pursued the policy so far?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. President Tinubu comes with a considerable pedigree in terms of private sector business dealings and management. He knows the importance of communication, that's first. He knows the importance of rules-based game in business, and he knows the importance of creating confidence in others while transacting in business. So he has already been primed, if you will, or prepared for this kind of work by his antecedents in the oil company, in the business world, and also in government when he was a governor. So he has the antecedents, he has the background to create this relationship and maintain it. By the way, his communication skills are excellent in terms of assuring people and making people feel comfortable with him and with the country that he represents. And on that basis, you can see in India, he was able to immediately went there. Within a matter of days, a commitment of about $14 billion was made by investors in India alone. And then on his way back, he stopped over at the United Arab Emirates, where he met with His Excellency President Mohammed Nahyan, where bin Zayed Nahyan.
On that for a minute, and that's the G20 summit and some of the highlights of that summit, particularly the deals the president struck with countries like India, Germany, Korea, and others to boost the economy. How beneficial will such deals be for Nigeria in the final analysis?
Well, the essence of diplomacy actually is to create opportunities, you know, be it in the political area, social, people to people, or economy. In this case, this encompasses almost all the angles of diplomacy: people to people contact, business contact, the economy, financing, investment, and travels. So what this translates into is, number one, is actually to tell the world that Nigeria is ready and open for business. And we are in a new dispensation where we understand the rules of the game and that the country is ready, both in the normative field, that is in terms of legal alignment of interest of the partners and us, and also in the objective areas of availability of the space to come and do business in Nigeria, whether in the area of agriculture and livestock, whether in the area of infrastructure like airports and rail lines and seaports, or in mining, as the case may be, or in power and energy, oil and gas. So the importance of this engagement is actually to renew confidence in those countries, in Nigeria, and also to provide the opportunity for Nigerian business people to meet their counterparts from other countries like Germany, Korea, India, the United States, Canada, Italy, Saudi Arabia, UAE, to exchange notes and also to inform each other about opportunities that are available in Nigeria and in their own countries, and to create the conditions for exchange of views, for them to come over here, to engage with us, both at the subnational level, that is at the state level, and at the federal level, to learn what can be achieved through this sort of engagement. So what Mr. President did was actually to establish the rapport that is necessary between us and the rest of the world, to take us into their confidence, as I said earlier, and also to note that there is a new person in charge in the country who understands the rules of the game and who wants them to come here and deal with us on mutually beneficial basis. So diplomacy here is being deployed as a tool to really attract investment and partnerships into Nigeria, and also to open up the markets of the world for Nigerian manufacturers, products, goods, and services. So we are looking at short term in terms of creating confidence, and the medium and long term in terms of bringing investments and subsequently making Nigeria a top economy in the world, among the top 20 possibly. Now we are, I think, around the top 35 or thereabouts. We want to be in the top 20. And with the policy being driven by President Bola Tinubu right now, I think, before the next 4 years or 5 years, we can be in the top 20 if we organize our policies, our laws, and structures. And if we resolve the issue of power in Nigeria, we can be in the top 20, I guarantee you.
Right. So this meeting with the UAE on lifting of visa ban on Nigerians, why do we need to woo the UAE in this regard?
Well, the signal is not only UAE, it goes beyond the UAE. Virtually all countries have issues with Nigeria in the area of visa, unfortunately, because of the attitude of some segments of this country, people who go there, commit atrocities, crimes, and other things. So the perception is that all of us have been classified into that group of miscreants who really do not respect the laws of other countries. So issuance of visa became a big problem. Virtually all countries impose some subtle and not so subtle restrictions on Nigerians. So resolving the UAE issue is actually a signal to other countries to be mindful of the new dispensation in the country, that we are not going to allow the attitudes and the interests and the needs of the other parties concerned. So it all boils down to rule of law and respecting commitments and agreements. And I think the president has done a sterling job here to go within a matter of hours. He was not even there on a state visit or on a dedicated bilateral visit. It was just a stopover. And we found it propitious to raise these issues. And I think, what this translates into is the respect and esteem in which our president is held by other countries and other governments. Nigerians should need to take very, very good, very careful note of that. That presidents, when they enjoy the respect and esteem of other countries, can achieve a lot. So at home, we should also show the same deference and respect to our presidents, and not at every opportunity to be seen to be intemperate in our consideration of the presidents or in terms of dealing with them on the basis of disrespect. We have to respect the office of the president. We have to respect the person of the president in order to add to his dignity, whereby others outside will also treat that person and that office with commensurate respect, as the UAE president has done, as the Indian prime minister has done, and as other prime ministers and presidents have done at the G20 meeting. This is very, very important. It's not only symbolic, but actually it's a concrete manifestation of the growth in stature of our country, symbolized by the president.
All right, Ambassador, I would like you to expatiate on that, but taking it from this angle, since deals like these require mutual benefit and commitment, what should Nigeria do to bring these efforts to fruition?
Well, I think, in the first place, we have to be very serious about governance. Governance is not simply coming into office, whether elected or appointed, to enjoy the privileges of that office and then leave. No. Governance is actually a commitment, a serious commitment to build the institution of the state, of the country and the government, and to uphold the rule of law, and to meet commitments made and given to other parties and partners. So governance is a holistic approach based on respectability, on commitment, and on guarantees that you are not going to change horses in the middle of the stream. In this regard, we in Nigeria must really look at our laws. Bilateral agreements, when we enter them, we should meet them faithfully. Our laws should be so transparent and genuine in terms of giving comfort to other partners and other parties to deal with us on the basis of transparency and objectivity. And also the machinery of government in Nigeria must respond to policies like opening the doors for investment and also eschewing and fighting corruption. Having said that, it is very important that our infrastructure in Nigeria must be quickly brought up to standard, up to global levels. Our airports, our seaports, our rail lines and roads. And then thirdly, we must enhance security in this country. Without security, you cannot successfully ask foreigners to come and do business or to settle in this country. Security must be looked at as a factor of national development. It is very important. Then fourthly, we have to look at governance at the subnational level, because every foreign venture, when it is established in Nigeria, will be established in the 36 states and the federal capital somewhere. So the federal government actually enables and enhances approaches to Nigeria. But the final beneficiary will be the states and local governments, where projects, industries, factories, manufacturing, etc. will be established. So keying in or carrying on board the subnational levels are very critical, very important. Right. So we must have complementarity of policy between state and federal governments in terms of enhancing the profile of the country and convincing anybody dealing with us that we are a serious nation. Our politics, our National Assembly, our ministries and ministers, they must now really see the president as the figure who gives the necessary drumbeat to signal the march of the country towards greater heights. And we must emulate his example by being committed, by being serious, and by being law-abiding.
Right. So moving forward, what other areas of mutual interest and investments do you want the president to focus on?
Well, first of all, I would like Mr. President to focus on the energy area, particularly development of new investment into the oil and gas sector. Because no matter how we look at the issues of global climate change and energy transition, the world cannot do without petroleum and gas for the time being, especially natural gas. So new investment, opening of new fields will be critical to the welfare of our economy. Secondly, Mr. President should really set up a team to generate policies and programs towards improving the electricity generation in this country in the next 2 years. If Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Brazil, Venezuela could do that, why can't Nigeria do it? I think we need to aggregate the collective energy and will of this country to overcome this existential problem of lack of electric power. Thirdly, issue of security is very critical. The armed forces, the police force, and all other security and intelligence agencies must be brought up to scratch in terms of training, equipment, and intelligence to deal decisively with national security issues. And the fourth area I would urge Mr. President to really look at seriously is developing the rural areas in Nigeria. Our rural areas have been abandoned for the last 50 years or so. That is the critical problem where poverty is, where insecurity is, and where unemployment is. If we are able to tackle rural development collectively and comprehensively, we will now diversify opportunities in the country, create the critical mass necessary for moving up our people out of poverty and establishing conditions for rapid economic growth. So a comprehensive rural development scheme or program is what I can recommend for Mr. President, among other things. Then infrastructure, our ports, they need to be really rewired, whereby a container ship can be discharged within 48 hours. At least that is not too much to ask. And also the congestion of the roads from our ports into the hinterland, and also creating rail links across the regions in this country are very necessary towards modernization. If we look at China today, China focused so much on creating transport networks in the country, that today, virtually, they are really stunning the world in terms of the advancement they have made in rail, road, air, and sea transport. We can do the same in terms of collaboration and opening up spaces in this country. 927,000 square kilometers of land is not a small piece of real estate. And you cannot develop that country without opening up the interior, the coastal areas, and all nooks and crannies of the country, linking them up by rail, by road, and by air and sea, in order to maximize the economic productivity of the country.
Right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Usman Seriki, former Deputy Permanent Representative of Nigeria to the United Nations. Thank you so much for joining us on Politics Tonight.
It's a great pleasure.
Thank you for your time and expertise. Thank you so much, sir.
Good night.
Now, let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our second guest of the day, who is a constitutional lawyer, Vincent Otopukpo, for discussion on the Delta Rep seat issue and matters arising. Let's stay with Politics Tonight.
Coming up in the month of September, on the 5th is International Day of Charity, while the 7th of September is International Day of Police Cooperation. The 8th is International Literacy Day. Also on the 8th is 1 year remembrance of Queen Elizabeth II's death. 10th September is World Suicide Prevention Day. On the same day is 1 year anniversary of when Prince Charles was proclaimed king. On the 11th of September, it's 22 years after the World Trade Center was attacked by terrorists in the United States in 2001. 15th September is International Day of Democracy, while the 16th is International Day for the Preservation of the Ozone Layer. 21st September, International Day of Peace, and 23rd is dedicated as International Day of Sign Languages. 27th September is set aside as World Tourism Day, and 28th is World Maritime Day. On the 29th is International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste. Stay tuned to TVC News as we bring you reports and analysis of these events. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Information is power, information is security, information is knowledge. On Labor Lens, we believe that working people around the world have real questions of their own. They want to know how the world of work operates, what it means to the employer of labor, how policies affect workers in the workplace. On Labor Lens, I ensure we engage effectively the organized labor, organized private sector, and governments to get out of them information workers are in need of. I am Sharon Ijason, asking questions that make you get sense of the workplace.
Welcome back. You're watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the second guest of the day. I am joined by a constitutional lawyer, Vincent Otopukpo, for discussion on the Delta Rep seat issue and matters arising. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Vincent.
Thank you for having me.
The Imo State National and State House of Assembly Election Petitions Tribunal has nullified the election of House of Reps member Ikenga Ugochinyere of the PDP. What's your reaction to the verdict?
Thank you for the question. There is no gainsaying. The fact remains that the judgment of the Election Petition Tribunal has provoked an inciting scholastic disputation, ranging from contentious issues and responses, because the judgment seems to have been given outside the provisions of the law and the age-long principles established by the Supreme Court. Section 134 of the Electoral Act prescribed the grounds upon which election of any candidates elected can be challenged. And it says, A, election can be challenged on the following ground: that the person whose election is questioned was not qualified to have contested the election at the time the election was held. Secondly, that the election is marred by corrupt practices and non-compatibility with the provisions of non-compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act. And thirdly, that the election, the person that was declared winner did not get the lawful majority of lawful vote cast in the election. And this provision, the Supreme Court have interpreted it in litany and cornucopia of cases, that the election tribunal, whose jurisdiction is circumscribed under this section, is not permitted by law to go outside this provision in case of cause of action or jurisdiction. Now, the fellow, after the 25th February National Assembly election in Idata North, the candidate of the All Progressive Congress, Mr. Abazu, approached the Election Petition Tribunal in a petition marked EPT 10, petition number 10, and on two grounds. One, that Mr. Ikenga, Honorable Ikenga, was not qualified as at the time election was held, on the ground that the primary election that produced him as candidate of PDP was not valid, on the ground that it was held at Aladema Hall in Owerri, outside the constituency of Idata North and South Federal Constituency. Secondly, he also challenged the person, because he listed INEC as a respondent number 1, Ikenga 2, PDP 3, then 1 Pascal Chigozie Obi, candidate of Labour Party, as number 4th, and the Labour Party as number 5th. So this is what he challenged for PDP and Ikenga Ugochinyere. For the other fellow who came second in the general election, that is Honorable Chigozie Obi, he alleged that the fellow who was then a member representing the state constituency in the National Assembly was, at the time of the election, not a member of Labour Party. He alleged that the fellow defected elected on the platform of Action Alliance and on the floor of the House, defected to APC. And as a member of APC, his secretary went and contested primary election in PDP and Labour Party. As at the time he was doing this, that he was still a member of All Progressive Congress. That is the cause of action, grounds of a petition subscribed in the judgment, which I have here. Now, beyond this point, the question is this: can the issue of Ikenga Ugochinyere, the primary conducted by PDP that produced him, that was held in Aladema Hall, Owerri, does that constitute a ground that can be used to challenge and nullify election, general election in this context? The answer is no. When you look at section 84, subsection 14 of the Electoral Act, it says that notwithstanding anything to the contrary in this Electoral Act, an aspirant who feels that a provisions of the Electoral Act or guideline of a political party or constitution of the party has not been complied with in the selection of the candidate in the primary election should approach the Federal High Court for redress. Please, for emphasis, an aspirant. Now, Supreme Court have interpreted this provision in litany and cornucopia of cases, but permit me to mention just a few. In the case of the locus classicus case that the Supreme Court established this principle was in the case of Onwa under Okafo, then Dahatu and Turaki, Ado and Nyako, then PDP and Seva. There are so many other cases the Supreme Court have established that for you to challenge the primary election of a political party, be it nomination, be it purchase of form, be it delegate that are supposed to vote in the primary election, be it the venue, because you are questioning the venue the political party conducted their primary election. So all these things surround as pre-election, primary election dispute. It is only a fellow who participated in the primary election with all other aspirants in question that has the local standard, the authority, the capacity, the constitutional virus, the statutory power to challenge.
Mr. Vincent, I would like us to take these actions one after the other so we do not get confused. Now, if the tribunal ruled that Ugochinyere was not validly nominated by the PDP to contest the election and ordered supplementary poll in 55 polling units where elections did not hold, are these not valid reasons for the verdict?
Yes, like I've said before, the tribunal held, I'm trying to lay foundation, that the tribunal held that he was the primary election, he was not validly nominated on the ground that the primary election that produced him, conducted by PDP, was held outside the constituency designated, contrary to the provision of Section 84, subsection 5C, I and II. But if you allow me to interrogate this in further, haven't juxtaposed this with the judgment of the Supreme Court I have cited here. Because judgment of Supreme Court binds inferior court, including the Electoral Tribunal, by Section 8287, subsection 1 of the Constitution. The Supreme Court said that its judgment by every person and authority on the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall enforce judgment of the Supreme Court and is binding on all parties, including the Election Petition Tribunal. Judgment of Supreme Court are not given just for mere giving sake. It is all to be obeyed. So the judgment was brought to the attention of the court, but the court refused to be abided by this judgment. Now, if you look at also the case of Mrs. Anthony Tabansi-Okoye versus Blindi Bazo, Supreme Court established this thing to say that issue that has to do with the party politics, primary election, venue, all these things, is an internal wrangling between contending parties within the political party. And an outsider is a medicine interloper and cannot be heard to complain that a political party breached their constitution, a different political party breached the constitution, or what have you. Then, if you look at the recent case of Senator Ayo Ogweze versus PDP, Ayo Ogweze participated in primary election in a suit he filed in Federal High Court in Enugu in 2014, a general election. He said that I participated in primary election sanctioned by Federal High Court judgment of Enugu State, as conducted by the chairman of PDP in Enugu State. That I did not participate in the primary election sanctioned by the national body of the PDP, by the committee appointed by the national body, headed by Asari Asara. So if the Supreme Court said no, by this mere statement of fact, you have taken yourself outside the people who can question the conduct of primaries conducted by the national body. You cannot question because you did not physically participated in the election. In this context, when you now look at this scenario, does the fellow that brought this action before the Federal Election Petition Tribunal has the local standard to sue? The question is no. Outside this, when you look at section, the tribunal seems to have imported the doctrine of continuous injury in law. Continuous injury means that actions and injury is still continuing. And the Supreme Court have abhorred this principle and abolished it, that it does not apply in election matters. In the case of Honorable Nedi Nwoko versus Peter Nwabushi, where the Supreme Court said continuous injury does not apply in election petition on the ground of it has been abolished by section 285 subsection 9, which says not to stand anything to the contrary of the Constitution. Every pre-election matter must be filed 14 days to the cause of action or the complaint of decision, it must be filed in court. This action ought to have been filed at the Federal High Court as pre-election dispute, because the primary election of the Aporusu Gochinyere was held on the 25th of May 2022. Now, this suit was filed after the general election of 25th of February 2023. So it is statute bad. And in the case of ANPP and Goni, Supreme Court said that when a time fixed by law has expired, that a time fixed by constitution is like Rock of Gibraltar and Mount Zion and cannot be shaken or moved. So,
all right. So still on the issue, Mr. Vincent, still on the issue of the primary, the tribunal said the PDP primary that produced Gochinyere did not comply with provisions of Section 84(5)(c) of the Electoral Act 2022. So how does this affect Gochinyere?
John, that provision, if you look at that section 84(5)(c), 1 and C, it is not mandatory. The Court of Appeal in so many cases have handled in Anambra, because Anambra elections were taken to Oka because of insecurity, as the case may be. Now, the court held that it is not mandatory, it's directory. Now, the court invoked the principles of a doctrine of necessity, which is a constitutional doctrine that seeks to legitimize or validate extra constitutional situation to promote and preserve political stability. So the principles of doctrine of necessity is that the election could have taken place in the data because of a far-reaching problem of insecurity that was very pronounced. That reason why the party, because you have to save life. INEC monitored it under Section 84 on the Electoral Act. And INEC is still complaining. They listed him, he participated and won the election. Now, it does not affect him per se, because he has a constitutional right to appeal, and which he's about to do. The law, Section 138 of the Electoral Act, has provided procedure for appeal, and he should remain in office, enjoy the benefit of his office until the time allowed to appeal has elapsed. In this context, when you look at the judgment of the court that purportedly seems to have sacked Ugochinyere, at page 32 of that judgment, look at what the court said. You're fantastically surprised to read this. He said, we agree with the submission of counsel to the fourth respondent, that is the fellow for Labour Party, that the issue of membership participation in the primary election of political party can only be challenged by members of that political party, and more specifically, participants in the primary. The said challenge also ought to be done within the statutory period of 14 days, which puts it squarely in the purview of pre-election matters. See Section 84, which I've started before, Electoral Act as amended, and 2859 and 14. The petitioners have once again failed to ventilate these grievances at the appropriate time, forum, and now seek to surreptitiously do so before this honorable tribunal, which is not allowed by law. It is our view that having resolved that it is a primary matter, it is pre-election matter, all other issues thereunder have become academic. However, in determining the merit of the issue, as argued by the parties bordering on qualification of fourth respondent on the basis of membership of the fifth respondent, Labour Party, the start-up point is to determine who has the virus to challenge the membership of another political party. The simple answer is that it is a member of that party. The petitioners, which is the Abazu, in this case, are simply meddlesome interlopers and have no locus standi. The court, the same judgment declared sacked Ugochinyere. This is the court responding to the challenge to Labour Party candidate who came second in the election. Now look at it. Out of common sense and decency, the court cannot, a fellow that came third in the election, scored 2,000-something votes, came third, won only in one polling unit, went to file action to nullify the nomination of the person that came first and the second, so that to pave way for him to climb the distance. So there is another judgment. There's another judgment that the court delivered on the same day, because the same Honorable Pascal Chidozie Obi filed action against the same Ugochinyere. The court marked the same judgment, the EPT 01. Judgment was delivered in that same petition on the same day. If you look at page 32 and 37 and 8, sorry, of that judgment, I don't have it here, but I've read it. For 7 and 8, the court said that the issue of membership, him defecting to APC at the floor of the House, constitute, under Section 65 of the Constitution, constitutes a pre-election matter and the borders of membership of a political party, which the court does not have power to inquire, which I agree with the court. Relying on principle in Anyanwu and Ogunleye by the Supreme Court, Joagi, SAN versus PDP. Supreme Court said membership of a political party is an internal affair of the party. No member or outsider cannot question it. The tribunal, I rightly agree with them. So why the tribunal, in the same judgment, in the same suit, just somersaulted to now invalidate and detect and constitute the ground that challenges challenge Ugochunyere's nomination as post-election question, on which it was used to nullify the exercise.
So, Mr. Vincent, before we get to the other issues attached to this case, are you also saying that this case shouldn't have been entertained by the tribunal?
The court likes jurisdiction. The court likes the virus, the jurisdiction. The grant of the petition is incompetent and ought not to be entertained at all. The court in Nigeria should not look at technical justice. The Supreme Court have won over time that the court should not look at technical justice, because it said that spirit of justice does not reside in its technicalities. Law is nothing but handmaid of justice. I'm quoting Supreme Court. That flexibility, which almost became a rule of law, often serves to render justice grossly. The most fundamental role of a judge is to dispense justice. Justice in this case, that people of Idato voted who they wanted to represent them. And the man has been sworn in. And the fellow that came third, that one-on-one polling unit, went to challenge him on the ground of venue of primary election. There is no gainsaying. There is no authority to support the action of the court. I have cited another judgment of the court where they said it's a pre-election matter. They cannot question it. Filed by a fellow that participated, a fifth respondent in this judgment against Ugochinyere. So how manage The court blowed hot in this side, the other side it blowed cold in the one judgment or one constituency, two judgments arising from one election. So the court in the final analysis should, business of the court should allow the interests of the people, allow the public policy, public interest of the people to reflect in the judgment of the court.
So, Mr. Vincent,
how to vote.
Out of the issues like party primary venue, irregularities in 55 polling units, among others, which one do you think did more damage to Ugo Chinyere?
Sorry?
Did you get my question? Out of the issues like party primary venue, irregularities in 55 polling units, and among others, which one did you think did more damage to Ugo Chinyere?
The issue of irregularity in some polling unit has not been proven. The petitioner did not prove it. It's a question of proof. Issue that has to do with corrupt practices and non-compliance. It is not the court is not for a Christmas when you come, it just give you. It has to be proved by credible, compelling, and cogent evidence. You must call witnesses from the polling unit that is alleged. So the primary evidence will be generated for the court to rely on. You don't just say that there was this one, that you have to establish it. In this case, this man called, I think, only 10 witnesses or thereabouts. He called only 10 witnesses. No, not up to 10. He called up to 5 witnesses. 7 witnesses he called for the entire Ide Atanota Federal Constituency. So there's no way he will say, this, it's not possible. To that extent, there is the damage the court has done is much more viewed from the perspective of having purportedly nullified the nomination, looking back to exercise that took place on the 25th of May, 2022. That is the venue of the primary election. You cannot by any... Okay, the tribunal that is sitting in this case ought to be sitting in Owerri. But judgment of the tribunal is delivered in Nasarawa State, the Manaba, after Abuja. What concerns the tribunal that ought to sit in Owerri? In Nasarawa is because of doctrine of necessity. For overriding public interest, for the issue of great insecurity in the state, they apply to be moved. It's safer for them to sit in Nasarawa. How come?
All right, so Mr. Vincent,
even if there's any problem in that day of primary election, that the people should still go there and vote.
How will you react to people?
What am I saying?
So how will you react to those calling for the review of the Justice Anthony Akwobi-led judgment? Is that practicable?
Constitutionally speaking, it is not practicable. When a court has handed down judgment, the only aspect that is left is for a fellow against whom judgment is delivered to exercise the constitutional right of appeal, which in the context is already in the pipeline. So there is no way a court that gives judgment will review it. It's not done. Unless there is any clerical error or mistake that the court want to contest. But what I'm saying in essence is this, that justice must not only be done, but expressly seems to have been done, convincing another man on the street, especially on the street of Idato, North and South Federal Constituency, that justice has been done. So that woman, Mbonko and Mbafo, on the street, who crawled and used walking stick to come out to vote that day of a candidate of his own choice, the court cannot take that away from them. The court cannot take the choice of the people away from them. For constitutional democracy to stabilize, for political stability in the country, the court must seek to reflect the wishes of the people, the mandate of the people. The choice of the people must reflect in our adjudication, in the judicial actions and activities. People can come to court and allege whatever you want to allege, but the end of law must be justice. And in this case, I do not see justice in what judgment of the court. I don't even see application of the law to the factual situation that transpired. Ordinarily, the court ought not to have entertained that application before them, which ought to be at the Federal High Court. Because if you thank God the court quoted section 8414, quoted 29C, which is on false information, quoted section 285 subsection 9 and 14. And when you look at section 289 subsection 14, it describes what is pre-election matter. A candidate aspirant challenging action of his party, a candidate challenging action of INEC, or a political party challenging action of INEC disqualifying their candidate. That is A, B, and C of section 285, section 14 of the Electoral Act. The court, stated all this provision. How come, having raised appraisal of the law, having appreciated the law, regretting this course of action, you still digress. You see when, I wouldn't know what transpired. So it's a very big, it's a great injustice to the people of Idiato North and South. And I believe at the appropriate time, a court of appeal on the face of the judgment they have done before in so many and litany of cases. Because the case I cited, the Honorable Mrs. Antonia Tabansi Okoye versus Lindy Bazu was handed over by the court of appeal. To say that you cannot, as an internal Langren within party, come from outside. Even the Supreme Court, in the case of Mama Taraba, you know Mama Taraba case, Supreme Court said, you cannot come from another political party in the governorship quarters.
So Vincent, thank you very much. All right, thank you so much. I've been speaking with...
Thank you very much.
Right, I've been speaking with the constitutional lawyer, Vincent Otaupopo, for discussion on the Delta Rep seat issue and matters arising. Thank you so much for your time on Politics Tonight. Thank you.
Having me, thank you.
And thanks a lot for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But the conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on X, formerly Twitter, at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Goodbye.
Thank you.